Hi guys, I'm Chris and I'm back again to do another review. This time it's not a movie review or a TV review or anything like that. SourceFed Nerd has taken a bit of a break from doing their movie club, but they are starting up a book club, which I think it's just Trisha and Rena who are doing. And I was really excited. I'm a big book reader. I love books. I think possibly even more than movies sometimes. So I was really excited. Plus also the first book that they've picked is one that I read last year, which I really liked, and it was Divergent. Book smell, yay. I think the girls on the show though are using audible.com to listen to the book, but I like my books. I need to actually physically feel it in my hand. I wouldn't even use like an e-reader because it annoys me. And this I thought was a really good book. It is kind of a young adult read, and it is yet another sort of dystopian society type book. And for those of you who don't know, dystopian societies are kind of, you know, our modern society as it stands, but something has happened to sort of change the basic structure of how society now functions. So whether or not it was like a war, or sort of like disaster in some way, shape or form, and it's just made what we know to be normal to change ever so slightly. And this one is set in Chicago, essentially, and the whole city is divided up into these 5 different factions, and each faction sort of embodies a different moral compass or a sort of a way of living. And it focuses on 16-year-old Beatrice Pryor, and she actually ends up changing her name to Tris because she grows up in abnegation, who are very much the selfless, you know, very bland, grey, stiff, regimented type faction, and when it comes her time to decide where she wants to go, after taking sort of a test that's supposed to give her an indication of where her true intentions lie, she actually finds out that she's what they call divergent, which is a person who can fit into multiple different factions, and they're kind of the ones that buck the trend on how it's supposed to be. So they're actually quite a dangerous person to be. So she chooses Dauntless and opts to hide there, and they're very much kind of the reckless, adventure, thrill-seeking, rebel type, fearless faction. So she goes to hide essentially in there, and that's where she sort of feels that she would fit the most. Now, like all young adult type reads, or most young adult type reads, it obviously has to focus on some type of love interest, especially when the main character is a 16-year-old girl who's kind of plain and normal. And that, if I was to pick the thing I didn't like about the book, I didn't like the fact that yet again it's another sort of plain Jane, run-of-the-mill, nothing supposedly special about this girl that is the main focus. And I know why they do it. It's done a lot in books because it's a lot easier when you have almost like a blank canvas type character. It's a lot easier for people reading the book to imagine themselves as that character, especially when you're targeting it to this age group. But what I really liked about this character is that she has a brilliant transformation throughout the book, and we actually see her really come into her own. She goes from being a very quiet, unassuming, just very bland person to she's quite fearless and kick-ass and, you know, really ready to take control of herself. And I think that was one of my favorite things about the book, is that she actually does have a character transformation. There are so many books with these types of characters that they just don't, the characters don't grow or find any empowerment of their own. And I think Tris is a great character for younger people to be reading. And I mean, I'm not in the original demographic for this book, but I loved it. I thought it was really, really well written. Another of my favorite things in this book is the fact that it is quite violent. And when you compare it to a lot of other sort of young adult reads, they don't often have the level of violence that this book does. And there are some very well written, descriptive, violent parts in it, which kind of a wee bit from the movie, obviously for ratings, which was really disappointing. But I mean, it was okay. The book was brilliant. There weren't really any bits I didn't massively like about it. I found the ending of the book a little bit frustrating if you're only reading just this one book. I think you need to look at all 3 books together, not as a trilogy of 3 separate pieces, but really as just one big, long, continuing story. And then it's a lot more satisfying reading it. But if you're reading just this one and you stop at the end of it, it can be a little bit, you just feel a little bit unfulfilled. So I would definitely recommending reading Insurgent next, and then the last one, which was Allegiant. But I think for me, if I was to pick the one bit of this book that was definitely my favourite, is the fact that, yes, in a way this book does have a love triangle, just like a lot of other books of this nature do. I mean, you have it with Hunger Games, with Katniss having to choose between Peter and Gabe. You have Twilight, but with her having to choose between, you know, either necrophilia or bestiality. What I love about this book is that essentially the love triangle that exists for Tris is between her choosing he's essentially her trainer in Dauntless. His nickname is Four. So it's either choosing him or not choosing him and giving into her own natural insecurities and fears of intimacy. And that is where sort of the triangle exists for her, is that on one hand there is everything that she's kind of been taught whilst being in abnegation and, you know, human contact of an interpersonal type nature is very foreign to her, and it makes her feel very uncomfortable at first, and she has that very strong fear of intimacy, yet she is so drawn to Four because he's such a commanding persona. It's kind of hard for her not to, and it's about that, either finding the balance for her or really letting go of her past and who she was, which then also means letting go of her family in a way who she was quite close to, or going for giving it all up and just going for gold and throwing it all to the wind and going for the boy that she loves. And I think that, to me, is a much stronger way of doing a love triangle than just, I'm trying to choose between 2 hot boys who both really like me, which is just so boring and done before. I think this way that they put that conflict together shows just how much of an interesting character Tris really is. A lot more than a lot of other younger characters that have written, and I absolutely loved it. I think this book is, I think on Goodreads I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5. I couldn't do half marks. I think I put 4 stars out of 5, but I meant to give it a 4.5 because it is really good. It's not perfect. There are still some odd bits in it. It is all written basically in the first person perspective from Tris, but I actually really liked that. I think it was really well done. I think Veronica Roth is a great writer, and I'm really interested to see what she does next now that she's finished this trilogy. And I think it was a great first pick for book club. So yay! Thanks Trish and Raina. I hope you guys enjoyed the book as much as I did. And I can't wait to see what we do next. So yeah, that was me. That was all I had on this first book club review for Divergent. Okay guys,